welcome back to Marilyn Storytime here at Lehman Library. We're so glad you joined us today. I have another question for you today. Have you ever gone camping? Oh, some of you have. This is the time of year, September, October, where a lot of people like to go camping. They either have campers or they sleep in tents. They go out into the woods and learn how to start a fire safely, or maybe they're making s'mores and cook their breakfast over the campfire. Well, today's story is kind of about that, except it's animals camping. And the name of the story is Forest Friends 5 Senses. Now, senses, do you know what a sense is? Not like a nickel and a dime sense. We're talking about the senses that we have on our body. If you look at your head, you have ears that hear, a nose that smells, eyes that see, a mouth, tasting, and fingers that touch. And so those are your 5 senses. So that's what our story is about. The bears and the animals are talking about their 5 senses in the story. And it goes like this. Bear was talking to all his friends around the campfire. They were sitting around one evening and they were telling stories as usual. And Bear said, "You know what? We should talk about the experiences we've had with our senses. Who wants to start telling a story about the 5 senses that we have?" And Hawk, being a really big bird with a wide wingspan, said, "Oh, let me tell you my story. I have a really good story," he said. "I was out flying around with all my other bird friends, and we were having so much fun, and we decided that we would have a race. And now, my eyesight wasn't really good, but we decided to fly. I mean, when you're sailing through the air, it doesn't really matter, does it? Well, I was flying really fast, and I was just about ready to win the race, and this mountain came up in front of me, and I didn't see it in time, and smack! My head went right into the mountain. I fell down, and I was really hurt. It really hurt my beak. And my friends came and rescued me, fortunately. And they said, "Oh no, we're going to have to take you to Dr. Owl. Dr. Owl knows all the cures for everything." So they took me to Dr. Owl, and sure enough, he was able to help me do things and fix up my beak. He put a Band-Aid on it and gave me some medicine. But he also gave me a pair of glasses because my eyesight wasn't very good. So some of us might have that problem. Hopefully you can see. But if you can't see well, you'll want to have your eyes checked. Well, Bear said, "Well, that's quite a story. That would be really scary if you couldn't see where you were going. Imagine if you were walking around somewhere and you couldn't see." Yeah, the other animals all agreed. That would be really scary. Bear said, "Well, who else has a story?" Well, then Rabbit said, "I think I'll tell the next story." Rabbit had those really big ears, And he said, "I was hopping along in the forest with Squirrel and the chipmunks and all these other foxes and animals, and they were all talking to me, but for some reason I just wasn't hearing them. And I was walking and walking and walking, and suddenly I looked around, and there weren't anybody around. Apparently they were all calling my name, 'Rabbit, Rabbit,' but I wasn't hearing them. My ears had too much wax in them. Finally, my friends found me wandering in the woods. They took me to Dr. Owl, and he cleaned out my ears really good and got out all the wax that had built up in my ears. But my ears were really important because I couldn't hear a thing. But now my ears are working again, and I can hear the littlest tiny creature if they're sneaking up on me." Well, Bear said, "That's a good story. That's certainly about one of the senses. Hawk, you had the one about seeing, and Rabbit, hearing. I've got one about tasting." Ooh, we all like to taste things, right? Bear said, "Well, I was really walking around in the woods too, as we all do because we're all woodland creatures." He said, "I saw this big beehive up on the tree," and he thought, delectable honey. I love some fresh honey. So I climbed up that tree, got myself a handful of that wonderful honey, and I put it on my tongue. Nom, 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 nom. It was so good. I was just eating that honey like there was no tomorrow. And suddenly the bees came out and stung me right in my tongue. "Ow!" he said. "I had such pain. I just ran and ran and ran. Those bees kept trying to get me." Finally, I got to Dr. Owl's, And Dr. Owl said, "Ooh, I can see that you have an excruciating pain in your tongue. I'll bet your tongue is on fire." "Oh, yes," said Bear. He said, "Have you got something for it?" And he gave him some medicine, and it made it better. But that sense of taste was not worth all that stinging that he got. And the bee said, "Well, if you guys would if you would stay away from our honey, we won't sting you." And Bear said, "Fair enough. I'll try not to do that anymore." So tasting is another one of the senses. So they thought, well, these are great stories for us to learn about. And then Skunk came along and said, "You know, most people think I stink, and I probably do." He said, "But there was a day where I couldn't even smell myself. I couldn't tell if I needed a bath or not. In fact, I was playing with one of my little friends, and she said, 'Skunk, you smell.' He said, 'I do?' And she accidentally let go of some of her scent, and it got on me, and I couldn't tell anything. I walked along in the forest, and all my friends said, 'Ooh, let's go teeter-totter.' And I got on, and they all got on the other end. Needless to say, I was up high, they were down low, and that was no fun at all. They said, 'Skunk, you need a bath.' He said, 'I guess my nose must not be working. I can't smell a thing.' So he too went to Dr. Owl, and Dr. Owl gave him some cold medicine, helped him clear up his cold, and now he can smell when he needs to take a bath. It's very important to smell. And finally, the other animal was Squirrel. Squirrel said, 'Well, you know, I had a similar problem one time. I was jumping from tree to tree with all the other animals out there, and we squirrels can just go really fast. And without even thinking, I landed on a tree branch with my front paws. Ooh, and there were little prickly things on there, and I got all these prickles on my paws. That didn't feel good at all. The sense of feeling was painful.' Good thing Dr. Owl was around. He took a tweezers and pulled out all the little prickly things out of my paws and gave me some medicine to make them feel better." Well, Bear said, "Well, those are some good stories about hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, and feeling. Our senses, we all need those senses. So I hope whatever you do, if one of your senses doesn't work, if you can't see well, make sure you get somebody to help you try to correct that problem. Or if you can't smell or hear or feel or taste things, perhaps there's a problem and you should have it checked out. And I hope you remember this song that when you probably were little, you probably learned this song, and it actually talks about a lot of your senses. It doesn't mention them specifically, but it goes, head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Remember that song? And it goes, eyes and ears and mouth and nose, head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. So you have to use your hands and touch all those things. You got your ears and eyes and nose and mouth. It talks about all your senses. So I hope you remember that as you sing that song, that we're blessed with so many good senses. Now, if you go camping, remember to watch out for some of the things in the forest. Smell and watch and listen, and don't get near the hot fire because you'll feel it. Thank you for listening to our story today. Come check out that book and see if you like reading it. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.